something triggered me to think about death. Maybe it was Peter, my friend, who told me some time ago that he's 82 or something, and then we were talking about death and health because her ex-wife is not in a good shape. Maybe that's the reason why we're talking about death. And he was saying that in his case, when it comes time that he's not capable to do many things, he'll just find himself a way to die by putting himself in the car and just suck up the carbon dioxide from the exhaust or something like that. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. In any case, that may have triggered, but the other reason possibly is that I'm going to be 74 years old tomorrow. So I don't usually think about the birthday because every day it's my birthday. So, but my friend was sending me some text and stuff, so I think about it. Maybe that's the reason. My mother died at 75, my father at 77, so I'm almost there. So those may be the reason, but in relation to my interest in Zen meditation and the spiritual issues, I believe one of the reasons why I got into Zen, Buddhism, and religions and all spiritual pursuit was because grandmother, I think she lived until 92 or more, but she was afraid of dying or some such thing that in the middle of the night she had a dream. And I heard about her not happy about the situation. And she was very well lived and a sharp person. But for some reason, she got that idea. And I felt sorry about her. The other reason about death I can think about, and the reason why I went into the spiritual interest in Zen and so forth, is when I was in high school. I read the Pensées, thought pieces by Blaise Pascal, and one chapter or the phrase was about useless purpose way or useless way of living, even if you have the wealth, money, what's the point of all of that? And it's such an insignificant existence. Whatever the term, I was struck with that thought, and I had the feeling I had was like my brain get white and blank. I couldn't handle it. But over time, I forgot about it. I was perhaps 17 or something at the time. In any case, I have been interested in Zen meditation, spiritual pursuit from especially after age 30. I've done some training before that at the Zen temple, but more seriously, along with my interest in other stuff in management consulting, changing the organization, transforming, to empower people and get the company, streamlined to function. Eventually, I figured out what I do the same thing in spiritual pursuit is to figure out so that I don't have much of a blockage within myself. And by going through Vipassana for 10-day meditation, I had this awakening experience, and that they call it the dissolution, or clearing up the blockages, so to speak. And the sense of transparency, vibration, fresh eyes looking at the world, amazing. So that confirmed me to keep on the path, and every year I did this 10 days meditation and sitting every morning and evening. Anyway, that was 22 years ago when I had that experience. So after that, and going through lots of religious studies from different religions, the people, I have a huge file developed and shared ideas at some of the blog in Japanese, because the Japanese has a unique library of the Zen and Buddhism related subject. Especially Daisetsu Suzuki was very attractive to me, and I got sucked into to read his maybe 50 books, maybe 80 books, I don't know, one after the other. It was interesting, and I thought, when I get old, I can just entertain myself or just play with this thought, and that's what I'm doing. It's a serious thing. It's not the playful thing, but the attitude of being playful. I think it may be a good idea to be creative to get the solution of even the very difficult subject, how to face death. The main point I guess I want to share is that I think I never felt like fear of death for a long time, but maybe several months ago, or there was even a near-death experience, I call it, and I didn't find it difficult. I thought if I couldn't wake up, that's okay. But several months ago, I was studying something about the brain and the mind, and something happened. I don't remember the exact situation, but that triggered me to be a little bit unstable, or quite a bit perhaps, because I was in the space of fearful of dying for I don't know how long, 5 minutes, maybe a little longer. I could recover because any delusionally thought that I may face in life, in a relationship, work, or financial, whatever the situation, this idea of the Sila Samadhi Panya in Vipassana, in Buddhism, they talk about do your right conduct and have a no mind, or samadhi, calm and quiet mind, and then you have the wisdom. So that's how the delusion can be taken over, eliminated. That's part of the Buddha's teaching. So in that situation of the fear of death didn't last long, but I was surprised because I thought I cleared up everything. But one of the reasons of my sharing these ideas on the voice memo or YouTube is to make sure that I check all angles of whatever the situation I may fall into, but have some clear idea of how to come up with the wisdom and compassion so that I'm more well-rounded, so to speak. So this passage, as I thought earlier, doesn't end to me because there's so many interesting sutras, sayings of people, and even a scientific field, like I may talk about the Gilbert Taylor, neuroscientist. Many studies are being done, and it's an interesting topic because it's about the people to go over difficulties, suffering, and find a passage into the future. So certainly the current situation indicates, because of the huge change taking place because of the technologies, internet, and all of that, even the political uncertainty, like in Ukraine situation, I'm watching carefully or reviewing what's going on. It's very sad. So that's part of the human nature, and the suffering is created, but we are here to go over that with wisdom and compassion. So this topic is becoming more and more imminent, important, even to the point that I feel that the birth rate is lowering for especially the well-developed countries, and the pregnancy rate is getting less. Lots of miscarriages seem to be there. I think the sperm count of men is being reduced. I think those are the indications. This is my intuitive sense, but the intuition is that because of the uncertainty, fear, stress, our functioning as a living being is being questioned, attacked. And there's a fear, concern, all that stuff to come up. So I believe, as I have been working on this field of spirituality, and as we also, as I mentioned in the other video, that we may have accomplished so much about how we can live longer, take care of the physical thing. But the mental thing still has lots of suffering, and therefore the spiritual awakening is something that we may need to go over so that we may have a more happy life. Lots of stuff, money, wealth, and the climate goes down, and the war still continues. That's not the good way to live, and no wonder, the growth rate of population may be going down very rapidly, and we need to address it for each of us to find a destiny in how we live and be happy about it, do our best and all of that stuff. So the question is how to live well. This idea of the right conduct, samadhi, sila samadhi panya, the wisdom, makes sense to me. And in any religions, I think they have the same kind of a notion of the meditative state, silent prayer, chanting, almost like going into the zone. And that zone experience, if you look at it, is where you don't find any brain functioning. There's no life, live or die, or even the sense of the time. And not rushing, just doing things as we are to do at each moment. So the zone experience, whether it's in the sports or in art, like painting, especially those mastered, those subjects, can get into the state of samadhi or into the zone. And I believe the kids are the same. I may have posted the subject of innocent mind. I think that Daisetsu Suzuki was pointing interesting case of when the kid came back from playing, parents asked, "What did you do?" And the kid says, "Nothing." And he thought that, or nothing is interesting because Zen is very familiar with the word like nothingness, emptiness, but it's also about the no mind and into the zone. So those are the hunch or the clues that we can find the good balance instead of being consumed about the difficulties, but also find, so to speak, our root of who we are. As much as I talk about the suffering and so forth, and also talk about the samadhi or blissful state of being in samadhi, there's no mind functioning. That's also what happened with the Gilbert Taylor. Her experience of having a stroke made her to not use the left brain because the left brain had a stroke and couldn't function, and therefore she lived in the right brain state, and she felt that was euphoria or the nirvana, blissful sense. And as for me too, in the zone or the meditative experience, they call it Dhammapiti, pleasure or the joy of being with Dhamma, which is the law. So if you are connected to the laws of nature, that's what we can gain or regain, as if we go back to the Garden of Eden. But the point back to Daisetsu is that you're not stay there. You're going to come back to the world and help people. That's the Bodhisattva's idea. Sect of the Mahayana pointing, the job is not done. We are to grow together and not just stay in the cave and be meditative and in the bliss kind of thing. The heaven is not the place to be, and we are to do the work. And I believe that to be the case too. So it's a little story, but that's part of the reason I went back into the world instead of having a peaceful life with the marriage. But the marriage turned out to be a little bit shaky, and I wanted to get back to the world, and I tried it for the last 12 years or something like that. And I found lots of difficulties. I'm revisiting all of my, religious or spiritual studies And that's the reason why I've been posting lots of videos here. In any case, we have various examples. A person like Gilbert Taylor, or the other person I can think about is Nisargadatta. Many people may not know him, but if you have a chance to take a look or listen to his books or whatever that is available, and perhaps maybe related to the straightforwardness of how he explains the idea, almost like a Zen-like approach, may trigger some interesting reaction, response, or connection in me that I think I know what he's talking about. He's talking about the natural state. Going back to the natural state, well, you start with who you are, and if you go deeper into asking who you are and the things that it doesn't make sense, you just throw away, you get the root of who you are, and that's what he calls I am that. And that state is what I may call it a natural state, or he's calling it natural state. In that state, again, it's like a Garden of Eden, living in the Garden of Eden, like an animal in a way, or the insect. So here and now, moment to moment life, and there's no way of being afraid of death, except intuitively when the threat pops up, the body may remember the similar event, so they may respond naturally from the way of the experiential wisdom they have gained, or we have gained. And we have the same notion of it, as much as Gilbert Taylor's experience was that she felt certain person has more compassionate sense. That was her mother helping her. But certain other people didn't have any compassionate sense, more mechanical and cold. There was some of the nurses not taking care of the patient, but just mechanically doing the job. So as much as maybe dog and cat and bird may feel the danger and figure out, even with the right brain, we have those characters. But the left brain of thinking too much about the future and thinking about the death, that the topic that I start to talk about. If you cannot understand the concept of death as in you are in the Garden of Eden, like animals and living in the now, there's none of that. So whatever you have in the brain or the mind, it's like a fake dream. And Daisetsu Suzuki, there's another guy, Suzuki Shozo, another Zen monk, was learn from death. And I believe that's a very good way to study how we live, by knowing death and overcoming the fear, or go beyond, transcend that. And then as much as we get into this zone, learning skills and become natural to do the painting or singing or management or investing, whatever the case is, as much as we can learn those skills, we can also learn how to deal with the delusion, suffering. That to me is the teaching of Buddha, or teaching of Jesus Christ and many well-known spiritual leaders, or even the layman who is not known by many, but I've noticed Brother Lawrence or Saichi in Japan, and there are those people who are just processing it their own, and we have those words available, and that's part of my interest in study and capturing, not just think from the conceptual point of view, but the experiential point of view, that they can pass through this difficulty to live life more connected to the root of who you are. So whatever the event and the approach you may take, the mastery in relation to how we live, find the destiny, is to, I call it like a middle way, or AI is similar, that you learn lots of experiential wisdom and out of that find the passage that makes sense to live. And if you're unfamiliar to certain situation, you need to be equipped. So as the environment change, we need to address what we can to be a master all the time. But that process, like a middle way, is you may try this, try that, and if it's too delusionally, then go back to the state of being, awareness, and then resolve it. It's the fear of death or the concern about the relationship or financial trouble, whatever the case is, we learn the skill to simply observe and, and process it in such a manner that the left brain doesn't overtake, but the original brain where we develop from early ages, as much as this Garden Eden discussion, can work out the solution. So the bottom line of all of this is that the delusion is okay. It's part of life, having a brain, but learn the way to process it by Shila Samadhi Panya, or be no-minded or empty-minded. Just stay in awareness, stay put. I remember one day I spent 6 hours not doing anything because I felt something is not quite right. And I could afford to just stay put and sort things out. So that's the kind of a process and the discipline that I believe will help us to find the mastery in how we live. Everything is impermanent. The environment that we live in is going to change. And internally ourselves, we can go through lots of impermanence, the change. So how to navigate life may not be a simple task, but going through those disciplines and the process and the principles that it's shared, and practice it, and then keep on practicing and checking, balancing. It's like I call it the pendulum. Go to the right, go to the left, figure out how to settle in the middle, and over time you gain those skills. And I hope that that message has some meaning if there's anyone listening to this talk. Thank you.